Town, more reviews from Town. Okay. Now, I mean, it was nice in one sense coming back to Central Florida from California because obviously, I hooked up with some of my old friends and, started relationships with friends from high school that I grew up with that we really hadn't had that deep of a relationship before, but they became one. John comes to mind, who is still to this very day probably my dearest friend, one of my dearest friends. We started playing board games, strategic board games, because we were gaming junkies. And he liked to buy his pot from me. So, we started doing that, and that was back in the 80s. And we did that consistently up until probably, 2015, something like that. And then he and his wife moved up to like the Carolinas to be near their children and grandchild. So our gaming kind of stopped then. But we still talk, and he still comes down once a month to work, and we see each other then. So, just a wonderful relationship. And John's been very good to me, particularly here during my illness. He has really helped me out a lot at times when I needed it, and I greatly appreciate that. But, it was fun when I came home, to hook up with all those folks, because, I hooked up with a good old buddy Bruce again, and Randy was around. Tom was still around for a while, so, and Jerry. So it was nice. But in any case, as nice as all that was, I had to make a living, and I had to follow my path. So I made my connections in the Channel 6 newsroom, and I just kept knocking, when it's I'm going to open, hey. And then there became an opening for a nighttime news editor. And I was like, oh, yes, absolutely. So I got one of the editors, the news photographer editors, to show me how the old two-machine, flatbed, three-quarter-inch U-matic videotape editing systems worked. Very simple, very straightforward, cuts only, pretty brainless. Didn't take long for me to figure that out, since I had already done, same type of editing back at the TV class we did in Rollins. And it was very similar to my film editing that I did on my little film in California. So I picked up on that very, very quickly. Okay, not a problem. So then the head of the news department gave me 3 stories and said, okay, you've got, I can't remember what it was, 45 minutes, go edit these together. So I took them and I edited them, and I think in 20 minutes I had them back on his desk. They're absolutely dead perfect. Couldn't ask for more. So boom, you got the job. So I left the production department and I began working in the news department. And it was about that time that I was walking down the hall one day, and the station manager came walking down the hall towards me and stopped and looked and said, Bruce? And I was like, yes, sir, Mr. Davies. What are you doing here? I said, I work here. And of course, the production office, honchos, the head of production, were watching this, and we're like, what the hell? That was when it became known in the station that who I was, who my father was, and the connection I had with people in the station, and why there were people in the executive floor of the station who knew me and who knew of me. So, did that help me or hinder me? I don't know. But it was interesting that all finally did come out. So I became a night editor. I would go in, I would finish up some stuff for the 6 o'clock news, and then I would repackage everything for 11, and then I would take the 11 stuff, repackage stuff for the guys in the morning who were doing the early morning show. And that was my gig, right? But I didn't stop there, right? I mean, I knew I wanted to become a news photographer. I wanted to move up. So I kept hammering them, I want to become a news photographer. So, I finally got them to, okay, let me take a camera and go out in the parking lot and shoot a video that you can use for the nighttime weather, right? Because when the weather guy would do the news, there'd always be this shot that he would put his graphics over, So, okay, it's a parking lot. But I would go and I would find nicely framed, pretty little shots that they could use as the background. Oh, okay. Well, he knows how to do that. He can do that. Then I got him, okay, let me take a car so I can get something better. And they'd give me a car in the camera. And I'd go out and I'd get even a nicer shot for 11 o'clock. And we did that for quite some time until it became obvious to them that I knew how to drive the car. I knew how to use the equipment. I knew how to frame shots. I knew how to edit. So, might as well. So the next opening that happened, bingo, I became a news photographer. And that worked out great. So there I was doing news. Now, the one thing I will say about news is I did not like hard news. I did not like driving around, hey, there's been a murder, go cover this story. There's been a fatal accident, a drowning, of this. I didn't like that stuff. I really, really didn't like it. Hey, the, Sidewalk Art Festival's going on, fine. That's soft news, got no problem with that, But in any case, I was doing what I had to do because I was a low guy. I had weekends and nights. So, the crappy stuff, right? So there I do my thing, blah, 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 blah. Everybody's got their thing. Nobody has a problem. And then there comes a time when I'm given an opportunity because somebody leaves the station to do the weekend news, to produce it. And I was like, sure, I'm single. I have no life. I'll make the extra money. Happy to do it, right? I'll produce the weekend news. And so I go in and I start producing the weekend news. And believe it or not, the very first weekend I'm there, we get a guy, which, back then was so uncommon, absolutely out of the blue. We get a guy with a gun who tries to take people hostage at our airport. Go figure. I mean, this is big national news, right? And I mean, I'm calling all my big shot reporters, and they all think I'm kidding. They think it's a joke. They don't believe it because, back then these things didn't happen, right? They all blew me off. So all I got is a rookie news photographer and a rookie reporter out there. And I got to talk this guy through how to set up the live truck, where to get it parked, how to get the mast up, get me a signal, get me something. It was thing. And the other stations, of course, are sending swaths at this. So we're just getting slammed, And I mean, it took my team, probably 6 hours to finally catch on. So we were so far behind the boat. But, no one ever tried to blame me for it because they knew it wasn't my fault. Because they all knew they had blown me off. Thought I was a joke, thought I was an idiot. So there they go. All our big reporters missed their big story, because the one person was there, she actually got some network time because they wanted some of our footage. So there you go, So go figure. But it didn't last that long, unfortunately, because the union, I was a camera guy, a news photographer, I was in the union. And the union said, oh, you can't do both. And I was like, what do you mean I can't do both? The weekends are mine. That's free time. I'm off. I'm not harming the union any. Oh, no. Sorry, no. No, in any case, you can't do both. You can do one or the other. And I was like, that really pissed me off. I mean, that was not none of the union's business. I wasn't taking money out of their pocket. I wasn't hurting them at all. I was doing my union job, and I was doing that job. So I ended up having to stop producing the weekend news. And that really annoyed me, frankly. And I had a bad taste in my mouth for that union at that station ever since, and still do to this day. So I think that was really crappy of them to do that, But in any case, before I did my last production as a producer, it was on New Year's Eve, and I got to do a little personal photo essay video, kind of like a little music video, on the Israeli-Lebanese war, what they called back then the Lebanese Civil War. And it was a very good little piece that I really liked. And amazingly enough, I made it, I ran it. No one seemed to care, sadly. I mean, no phone calls, no letters, no nothing. Nobody ever said anything. So it ran. But, that was my last duty in that respect. And then the big change would come for me in the news department shortly thereafter. But that's another story unto itself. So we'll get into that one next. Peace, everybody. Hang 10.